I sure had a wonderful time last night. Leastwise, they tell me I did. I sure had a wonderful time last night. I really blew my lid. Now I went to a party, I remember that much. But after 4 or 5, I kinda lost my touch. But I sure had a wonderful time last night. Leastwise, they tell me I did. Girls, I had a well of a time last night. Really got myself some kicks. I sure had a wonderful time last night. Took me right back to the sticks. Between that band with a funky beat and that new atomic beverage called that sneaky beat. But I sure had a wonderful time last night. Leastwise, they tell me I did. I sure had a wonderful time last night. I don't know how I got to bed. I sure had a wonderful time last night. Now come feel this lump on my head. They say I got kinda noisy and started to shout. 4 big bouncers grabbed me, but I threw them out. So I sure had a wonderful time last night. Leastwise, they tell me I did. I sure had a wonderful time last night. I really had some fun. I sure had a wonderful time last night. Didn't get home till 1:30. You know I'd like to take you with me the next time I go. But when the heck was it? You know I don't even know. But I sure had a wonderful time last night. Leastwise, they tell me I did. Oh yeah. Leastwise, they tell me I did. Uh-huh. Leastwise, they tell me I did. Oh yeah. Leastwise, they tell me I did. Hey, Judge, when are you gonna let me out of this jail? I done played my fine.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Well, on behalf of the National Blues Museum, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. We have a very special program. It's entitled You Gotta Move, the Folk Blues Revival of the 1960s. And our guest tonight is a very special guest, and he's going to tell a little bit about his experiences with some of the early blues legends and how that kind of influenced his career. But without further ado, I'm not going to stand up here and talk all night. I'm going to let Mr. Bob Case get to it. So if you would join me in a warm welcome to Bob Case.
Oh, I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, lords and ladies, children of all ages. I'm going to take you back on a trip in the spring and summer of 1972. I'm going to take you down the rivers through the River Sidwell. I'm going to take you down to Memphis and Mississippi and Tennessee and Brownsville and Como, Mississippi. We're going to head down Highway 61. In 72, I was living in St. Charles, and I was living in a converted attic across the street from a Civil War infirmary on 3rd and Chauncey. I was playing in a trio called the Main Street Washboard Band. And on Main Street in St. Charles in 72, there was a coffee house called the Earth House. And we would play there. It was a trio. The trio consisted of Tom Greer, Maynard Silva, and myself. And Maynard went to school in St. Charles, Lindenwood, and then in, I think that was the name of stuff there. But Tom Greer was cameraman for Channel 9. And during the folk blues revival, Channel 9 brought in Booker White to play the Ethical Society. That was off of Grand on Washington. The Ethical Society was built for public speaking, and it was a beautiful building that later on became the Sheldon Concert Hall. So the Channel 9 brought in Booker White to play there one night, and Tom Greer was the cameraman for Channel 9, so we got to meet Booker White. And the next night we had him at the Earth House, which was on Main Street in St. Charles. He played on the back porch, and the back porch overlooked the Mississippi River. So that was kind of like the beginning of how I got involved in the country blues. But I'll tell you a little bit more about Booker later. Short time after that happened, I went down into Mississippi, actually into Tennessee with Ron Edwards. We went down to find Furry Lewis. We had heard about Furry and knew about his address, and Furry lived on Mosby Street. So we went down and drove down to Mosby Street and found Furry. When we drove down there, we drive down Mosby Street. Furry was sitting on the front porch. It was really easy. Drove right up, pulled in front of the house, and had a little small shack, and got out, introduced ourselves, told him we came in from St. Louis to meet him, and he was a very gracious, easygoing guy. So Furry Lewis was born Walter Lewis in Greenwood, Mississippi on March 6th. It's either 1893 or 1899. It's kind of like, could be either one. It's like something he didn't really have a birth certificate, and you ask him, it would be a different year every time you asked. He died on September 14th in 1981. With his mother, he moved to Memphis when he was 7 years old. He got the name Furry from a childhood kind of companion, a friend of his named him Furry. That's how he got his name of Furry. His real name is Walter Lewis. When Furry was playing, he played in medicine shows, and he was doing comics, and he was doing, things from the back of, they would do it from the back of trucks, medicine shows. They would pull into a town, and they would sing and play, and there'd be comedians, and he would be doing different songs. He lost his leg in 1917, which he was probably about 17 years old. He was hopping a freight, and his leg got caught in a coupling. He was hopping a freight to like save some money on traveling, but actually he lost his leg that time. He stopped playing in the medicine shows in 1922 and moved to Memphis. While he was in Memphis, he became a street sweeper, and that's a job he worked for the city of Memphis until 1966 when he retired. But by having his job as a street sweeper in Memphis, he could play in the nighttime or on the street corners, and he continued to play. He continued to play music. In 1927, he recorded, in 1927 and 28, he recorded 10 songs for Victor Recordings. And then in 1929, he recorded 4 more for Vocalion. But that was it until the 50s. He only recorded in the late 20s, and then he didn't record again until into the 50s. So in 1959, Sam Charters was looking for people Sam Charters was a record collector. And these record collectors, they had all these records that they were trying to find out if these people were actually still alive. And they found that Furry was actually alive and living in Memphis. So Sam Charters went down and found Furry, and by finding Furry, he recorded him. And Furry was the first blues person that was rediscovered, and then later on brought out on tour, and it started a whole different life for him. He played at the Newport Folk Festival in 1964, and he recorded. When we got to the Memphis, Furry welcomed us. We told him we played his music, and I knew that Furry liked Stag beer, so after a couple minutes or so, I said, Furry, is it okay? I got a case of Stag out in the car. Could I bring it in? Because I don't want it to get, it's kind of like, I don't want it to get warm. Could we put it in your refrigerator? And he welcomed that kind of an opportunity, and I did too, I told him Furry played in standard tuning and he played in open G tuning. So we had brought our guitars, and we told him, Ron and I told him that we played in those kind of tunings, and we'd like to know if he could show us a tuner. So let me show you a song that I learned from Furry. This one's called Perline. Furry played, like I was saying, Furry played in the medicine shows, and he was a comedian. There's a picture of Furry right there. Furry's the one on the left. Oh, wait a minute. No, Furry's the one on the right. I'm the one on the left. Yeah, that's me when I was your age. Yeah. 20. You're 22, aren't you? Yeah, I'm 20. I was 20. So brought along this guitar to play for you tonight. It's a harmony similar to the one that Furry has. That's not a harmony, but it's similar to that guitar. I got it in open G tuning, and I started out playing in open tuning because of Furry and the other people that I met. I had been playing in standard tuning up until that point. Perline, why don't you come home? Perline, why don't you come home? home is on the water, I sure don't like the land. My home is on the water, I sure don't like the land. Oh my, got my finger stuck underneath the string. How did that happen? Did that ever happen to anybody out there? Home is on the water, I sure don't like the land. My home is on the water, I sure don't like the land. I ain't never loved but 4 women in my life. Ain't never loved but 4 women in my life. Ain't never loved but 4 women in my life. My mother, my sister, my sweetheart, and my wife. So Furry played in a style that, you know, he put his hand over the top of the guitar. He was kind of like a showman, and his timing wasn't like 12-bar blues. This is country blues, and it had a larger kind of like timing where he would play the line. He'd play that as long as he wanted to. You know, he'd play it twice, or he'd play it 3 times, or once, or not at all. He'd put his hand over. He'd play the 4 chord or the 5 chord, but sometimes he wouldn't even play the 5 chord. He'd just play the 4. He'd play it over the top. He had a unique style that I enjoyed, and he was a funny guy. He told me that he got married, him and his wife, when they got married, Furry only had 10 cents, and his wife had a quarter. They were married for a little while, and while they were married, things changed, and his wife decided to leave him. And Furry said, "What are you leaving me for?" "Well, you only married me for my money." He told me he stopped drinking. He doesn't drink. He only drinks by himself or with other people. Yeah, Furry, he got a lot of attention, and he was such a funny guy and really easygoing. I used to go over to see him all the time, and when I was down in Memphis, met a woman, little Laura. She was a dreamer. She was the dreamiest girl I ever met. And she let us stay at her place in Memphis. We used Memphis, Ron Edwards and I used Memphis as our hub. And we would go out from Memphis down into Como, Mississippi, and Brownsville, Tennessee, and we'd meet the other players that we were looking for. But Furry, he became popular with the popularity of the folk blues revival. He became popular. And Joni Mitchell actually even went down and wrote a song called Furry Sings the Blues, about going down and meeting Furry just like I did, went down and met Furry. Joni Mitchell did also. He was on the Johnny Carson show, and he was a real funny guy, you know, and he was Burt Reynolds. He's in a Burt Reynolds movie that was basically, he was the character, he played himself in the movie. But yeah, Furry. So Furry, when I was with Furry, I told you I first saw Booker White in St. Louis when he came to the Ethical Society and played. But when I was with Furry, I was talking about seeing Booker in St. Louis, and Furry says, "Yeah, Booker just lives down the street. He lived on Mosby Street also." And so Ron and I went down a couple weeks later and met Booker White. Booker was born Booker T. Washington White, named after the educator and the civil rights leader Booker T. Washington. And he was born on November 12th, 1909, and died in 1977. He got his guitar when he was 9 years old. His dad played the guitar and the fiddle, and he was a railroad man who was always away from home, but he was in and out of town, and he played. When Booker was 20 years old, 21 years old, he made his first record in 1930, and he was billed as Washington White, the singing preacher. And he was recorded 12 gospel tunes in 1930. But the record sales were small and nothing was going on with that. So Booker became a rambler. He rambled and he played baseball. He was a baseball pitcher for the Birmingham Cats. And he was also a boxer in Chicago. When he was in Chicago boxing, he met and recorded 2 songs. One of the songs, and he recorded in 1937. There's Booker right there, yeah. You got the Booker picture of me and Booker? Yeah, okay. Well, when Booker recorded in 37, he recorded a song called "Shake 'Em On Down." Became a hit. "Shake 'Em On Down" became a hit, and when that became a hit, he went back to Mississippi, was celebrating with his family. But there was a guy there who didn't like Booker when they were younger. He didn't like him, and he ambushed him. When he ambushed Booker, Booker shot him. He didn't kill him, but he shot him. But by shooting him, Booker wound up going to Parchment Farm Prison. And he went to prison for 2 years. So that ended his recordings. For 2 years, he couldn't record because he was in prison. When he got back out of prison, he recorded 14 songs. And in doing that, he wrote these autobiographical tunes that he had, when he was in prison, he had kind of got a lot of time to think, and he wrote songs that were autobiographical. He had gone to record, and when he went to record, the man who said, like, "Listen, this sounds like everything else. Here's the bottle. Go back to the hotel and sit in a room for. You got 2 days to come up with something." Well, he went back and he wrote 14 songs that later on became incredible songs and hits. And during that time, one of the songs he wrote was called "Fixin' to Die." I feel like I'm fixin' to die. I feel funny in my eyes, Lord. I feel like I'm fixin' to die. Well, Bob Dylan recorded that on his first record. And when Bob Dylan recorded it, there were 2 people that were out there, John Fahey and Ed Dennison, who were record collectors, and they were looking for Booker. And they wrote a letter to Aberdeen. They sent a postcard to Aberdeen. "Booker White, blues singer from Aberdeen." Well, Booker had a song called "Aberdeen," but he didn't live in Aberdeen. He lived in Memphis. So Booker was later on rediscovered in the 60s, living in Memphis, working for the Newberry Equipment Company, making tanks. He was doing welding, making tanks, and he was doing regular daytime work. But during that folk revival, he became rediscovered through that record collectors like John Fahey. They found him there in Memphis. With the folk revival, he recorded and played and got rediscovered, and he was at the Newport Folk Festival. He made 2 trips to Europe with the American Smithsonian Blues and Folk Festivals, and he played at the Olympics in Mexico, and he did. It really was something. Those people, they got rediscovered, and they wound up making money, making music. I'm going to play a song that I recorded this song like in the 80s, in 81. This is about a dance that these two young ladies are going to get up and do for you in just a second, called the Black Bottom. This is a National Steel 1934 National Steel guitar. And Booker played a National Steel because these people, they've recorded in the 20s, and they didn't have electricity and electric guitars. So they needed something that would, this has a resonator on it, and it's made out of bell brass. They needed something that was loud. I told you how Booker played at the Ethical Society, and the next night we took him to the Earth House in St. Charles, and he played on the back porch overlooking the Missouri River, which was even further than across the street. But he played on his National Steel. Well, my baby said, watch me dance. Watch me put it on the floor. Watch me put it on the floor. Watch me put it on the floor. Well, my baby meant to feel good. She got down on the floor. She got down on the floor. She got down on the floor. My baby commenced to feel good. She got down on the floor. She got down on the floor. She got down on the floor. So Booker played with a real rhythmic style, where Furry played like a alternating bass. Booker played more of a rhythmic. And these guitars were really loud. He could play these, and they played them out in fields for dances, and he played a lot of rhythmic things that people could dance to. So Booker and Furry, they both lived in Memphis, and they lived in the city. The next person I'm going to talk to you about is Sleepy John Estes. And Sleepy John was kind of like some of the reason that I went down and found these people was because Ry Cooder was a record collector, and Ry Cooder was written up in Downbeat magazine about how he really loved Sleepy John Estes. And Sleepy John was like Booker. He was an autobiographical writer. Sleepy John wrote songs about his life, but he had one song called Going to Brownsville. And so Ry Cooder went to Brownsville and he found Sleepy John Estes. So I thought, well, I'm going to do the same. We learned through imitation. I'm going to do the same. So I went down to Brownsville and found Sleepy John. But it's an interesting story. And so Sleepy had a song called Floating Bridge. And it's an autobiographical song where he's in a car and they're going over this bridge that isn't stabilized bridge. It's the bridge that is kind of like it's movable. And the car goes off of the bridge and the car goes underwater. Everybody gets out but Sleepy John. They realize that John's still in the car. He's asleep, you know. He got his name Sleepy John because he was narcoleptic. But he's asleep, and so he's in the car. They go back in the car and get him out. But he wrote a song called Floating Bridge, you know, about being underwater. So his name was John Adam Estes. He was born January 25th, 1899 in Ripley, Tennessee. And he died June 5th, 1977. So he was 78 years old when he died in Brownsville. He got the name Sleepy because he was narcoleptic. And he would fall asleep. Even when I was with him, he used to fall asleep, you know. But when he was 15 years old, he got struck in his eye with a rock, which caused him to be partially blind. But later on in his life, he was totally blind. His dad was a sharecropper and played the guitar. They moved to Brownsville in 1915. Sleepy John was like Furry Lewis. He played in medicine shows. And John was the one who was different than the others that I met. And how he was different, it was he wound up playing in a group. He played with Hammy Nixon and Yank Rachel. Hammy Nixon was a harmonica player, and Hammy played the harmonica, and Yank Rachel played the mandolin. So John really was more of a writer than an instrumentalist. The others were kind of more instrumentalists. He first recorded 3 songs in 1929 for Victor. Then in the 30s, up until the 40s, he recorded for Decca and Bluebird. He recorded over 35 songs. But in the 40s and the 50s, he's out of the public eye until 1952. And in 52, he recorded for Sun Records. He recorded 3 songs. And like I said, his stuff was really quite interesting. His voice was an old sounding voice. And because of his old sounding voice, when they had the 60s blues and folk revival, they thought that he was already dead, you know, because they thought he was an old man to begin with. But he was found in 1962. Living in poverty and blind. He was totally blind and living in poverty in Brownsville, Tennessee. He played the Newport Folk Festival. Like I said, these guys later on became rediscovered, and they played throughout the world, and they made money making music, which is some of the thing they wanted to do all their life. That's what I wanted to do when I was 22 years old. I wanted to get a career in music. Career comes from the same word as car. Car is a vehicle that takes you different places, and your career takes you different places. It's a vehicle that takes you different places. These people played music all of their life, and their career took them to Europe and folk festivals in Newport. And I saw Sleepy John with Hammy Nixon and Yank Rachel at the Graham Chapel in the early 70s at Washington University. But he became very popular also. I'd like to play a song, and if we could put our hands and hearts together, I'd like to bring up a friend of mine, Chuck Loeb, to play harmonica. He's going to play a harmonica part because John played with Yank Rachel and Hammy Nixon. I thought of having a second person, and we like to Put our hands and hearts together for Dr. Lloyd. So, no, that isn't Ron Edwards. Ron Edwards was, you never see him in these pictures because he's the one taking the pictures. The gentleman sitting down is Sleepy John, the thin person. The heavier set man is Hammy Nixon. And then that's me with the glasses, and then Dave McKenzie. That's Dave McKenzie. He's a St. Louisan who was we used to travel together, and before there was the Geyer Street Sheiks in St. Louis, there was the Chippewa Sheiks. That was Dave McKenzie and I. And the name the Sheiks came from the Memphis Sheiks or the Beale Street Sheiks. And we were called the Chippewa Sheiks. Dave and I used to play at this place called Cafe Louis down on the landing in the early 70s. But yeah, you won't be able to see Ron because he was always taking the pictures that I brought over today. So John played an electric guitar. There's an album called Electric Sleep, actually. And this is one of the tunes that he did called Drop Down Mama, a song that he wrote. I recorded this one in New York City years ago, and I had Ron Edwards and I were doing 2 slide guitars on this song. We had Charles Honeyboy Otis on the drums. He was a gentleman from New Orleans who played with everybody from New Orleans. Professor Longhair. He was on Iko by the Dixie Cups, and Howie Wyeth was playing piano. So it's 2 slide guitars, piano, and drums. And we're going to do it like guitar and harmonica now. It's called Drop Down Mama. Drop down, mama, let your daddy see. Got something, baby, keeps on worrying me. Mama, don't allow me now to stay around all night long. They think I'm crazy, baby, I know right from wrong. Sweetest peaches don't grow on a tree, and the sweetest honey don't come from the bee. Mama, don't allow me now to stay around all night long. They think I'm crazy, baby, I know right from wrong. I'm not a tree surgeon, I'm not a tree surgeon's son, but I can spread your limbs until that tree surgeon comes. Mama, don't allow me now to stay around all night long. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? They think I'm crazy, baby, I know right from wrong. How about let your daddy see. You got something, baby, keeps on worrying me. Mama, don't allow me now to stay around all night long. They think I'm crazy, baby, I know right from wrong. Yeah, I'll show you. Okay, so now we're going to go from Memphis. We're going to go 40 miles south of Memphis to Como, Mississippi, and meet Fred McDowell. Fred McDowell, he was born January 12th, 1906 in Rossville, Tennessee, and died in July 3rd, 1972 in Como, Mississippi. Fred's parents died when he was really young, and he learned his guitar, how to play the guitar from his uncle. He started playing dances when he was 14 years old. He moved to Memphis in 1926. So he's 20 years old. He moved to Memphis. He worked there for a couple years in the Buckeye feed mill before he moved to Como, Mississippi, and then lived in Como, Mississippi, picking cotton and working on the farm. There was 4 people I've been talking to you about. 2 of them were Furry Lewis and Booker White. They lived in Memphis and they worked in the city of Memphis. Where Fred McDowell, he lived in Como, Mississippi, and he worked in the farm. He worked on the cotton farms, along with Sleepy John. Sleepy John, he worked in the farms. He lived out in the country in Brownsville. So 2 of the 4 people lived in the city, and 2 of the 4 lived in the country. Fred McDowell, he's really unique because for a number of reasons, but he was recorded for the very first time. The other 3 were recorded in the late 20s or early 30s. They began their recording career. With McDowell, he began his recording career in 1959 when Alan Lomax found him and started recording him. He immediately was really popular because of his style. He plays in a style that's called the hill country style. And it's sort of like parallel with the Delta. He's not a Delta. The hill country style is parallel with the Delta, but he's not a Delta player. He's a hill country player, and they play in repeated drone sounds. I've been playing this stuff here tonight that's been country blues, and the country blues doesn't have a 12-bar progression. The city blues had a standard 12-bar progression that was understandable and everybody knew. Here I was counting out different things. I would play the 1 chord, and then I'd play it maybe instead of 4 bars, I'd play it 6 or 7 bars, and then I'd play the 4 chord. Those things were unique, and the country blues was like a random style of timing and length of the verses and stuff. In the hill country, they had a whole lot of droning sounds. When Ron and I started out, we started out driving down Highway 61 from St. Louis. It was a 2-lane road that ran parallel with the river. And on that 2-lane road, we went to Memphis, and then later on from Memphis, all the other cities I mentioned, Brownsville and Como, Mississippi. But Fred McDowell had a song called 61 Highway that I'm going to play for you right now that I learned from Fred, and it was a popular tune. Fred became popular in the 60s with the folk blues revival, and he was at Newport in 68. He toured Europe with the American folk blues, and he made records starting in the 60s. He taught Bonnie Raitt how to play slide guitar. And he also, the Rolling Stones used his version of a gospel tune called You Got to Move. And he was the one who, they did his version of that song. And so what Fred would do is he would play dances on Saturday nights and he'd play the church on Sunday morning. He had so many gospel tunes that he did. I know tons of them that he was doing. I was thinking of doing the gospel tunes tonight, but I like to do with the 61 highway because that was a road I took from St. Louis, a 2-lane road that went down to Memphis the very first time I went down and met these guys. But I went down and I met Fred, and how I met Fred was I went to a Stuckey's gas station, and it was a gas station that he would just hang around all day long. He'd just sit outside this gas station. I heard this story about one time there was a guy from Britain. He was a record collector from Britain, and he goes to the Stuckey's gas station. That's how I found out about it. He goes to the Stuckey's gas station, and he says to this guy comes in and starts pumping gas for him, and he tells the guy, he asks the guy, could you help me? I need to find Fred McDowell. Could you help me find Fred McDowell? And the guy pumping the gas goes, yeah, I can help you. And he goes, oh, thank you so much. Great. You know where Fred McDowell is? He goes, oh, yes, I know. Yeah, I know where Fred McDowell is. And the guy goes, oh, good. Where is he? And he goes, right here. Fred was pumping the gas. He didn't work at the Stuckey's. He just sit around there all day if somebody come in. He wasn't working there. He just pumped gas for them or wiped their windows, So I went to the Stuckey's gas station and I found Fred. He wasn't there that day, but I found him, and they said he lived in a house trailer behind out in a field behind a school on the edge of town. So I drove to the edge of town, then I drove to the other edge of town, then I drove to the other edge of town, and I finally found him behind this school in this trailer. So we would go there and visit with him, and we would be there, and we would follow the shade around the outside of the trailer as the day progressed. We'd go around the outside of the trailer. And this is the last picture of Fred McDowell taken when he was alive. And that's, how old was he? He was 66 years old. Yeah. And the girl closer to Fred is little Laura. She's dreamy. She was the dreamiest girl I knew, No, she wasn't Indian, but she sure was cute. Well, let me play his song now called 61 Highway. 61 highway, Lord, it's just the meanest road I know. Runs all the way from New York, all the way down the Gulf of Mexico. Went to school one Monday morning. Lord, I had to throw my books away. Wrote a note now to my teacher, said I'm gonna try Highway 61 today. You see Francine, tell her that she's alright with me. You see Francine, tell her that she's alright. Tell her that she's alright. Tell her that she's alright with me. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That was a 61 Highway by Fred McDowell. That was kind of like a little takeoff of his version. So I learned from these gentlemen when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to have a career in music. I still have a career in music, but I later on did have a career in music. I played country blues for a while, but then later on played city blues. And I backed up a lot of musicians on bass. I played the bass with a lot of musicians I was a backup musician, playing bass in city blues bands, and I'm so happy that I learned the country blues first, because that was really something that had a big thing going, because you could play country blues by yourself. With city blues, you needed to have a band, so you wound up, if you didn't have a band, you weren't playing. But I could go out and play by myself, or I could play with a band, so it gave me more opportunity. I'd like to do a song now. If you could put our hands and hearts together, bring Charlie back up to, play a harmonica on this tune that I wrote. This is a song that I recorded for the 17 and 17 album. The St. Louis Blues Society has a CD they put out each year. This song is called Sometimes It Feels Like the Whole World's Gone Crazy. I don't think I got enough time but I got another song you might like called "The Devil's in the White House."
And when did you write that?
I wrote "The Devil's in the White House." It's a current song, That's it. Yeah. Huh? Sometimes it feels like the whole world has gone crazy. Line between right and wrong, it seems so dark and hazy. Do lovers really fall in love to stay? Stand beside each other, come what may. Do lovers really fall in love to stay? Stand beside each other, come what may. Are promises really made and kept? Not something someone says and then it skips. Are promises really made and kept? Not something someone says and then forgets. Life is like a piece of clay, shaped by your intentions every day. Life is like a piece of clay, shaped by your intentions every day. Come on, Charlie. The present swallows up the past. Use all your strength and make tomorrow last. The present, it swallows up the past. Use all of your strength and make tomorrow last. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed the things that I've been talking to you about tonight, and I'm interested in taking some questions. If anyone has a question, yeah. That's what That's what McDowell said. He played a slide guitar, an electric slide guitar, and he became very popular. But they thought that it was because of his rhythms and things that it was rock and roll. And he said, "No, I don't play no rock and roll. Like, this isn't rock and roll. This is blues." I was 22. Yeah. Yeah, just a couple years ago. Yeah. I started going down in the summer and spring and summer of '72. I was born in '50, and I went there. I'd been playing in St. Louis, and I was playing the blues in St. Louis, and I wanted to learn directly from these people, and I learned directly from them. I had their records, but then I learned directly from them, and I got a really deeper understanding of what the music meant to them, and what was more of what the life of a musician was. And I wanted to continue, and I did continue that as in my career, and I got a little start from doing that. It's not like you hear these people playing today, and they're playing like all these exercises that they're learning, and all this goofy shit stuff like that. And it doesn't have any feeling. These gentlemen, they only knew how to play one thing, and the one thing that they played, they had played with so much feeling. It became a signature for them, and you would hear it, and you go, "Oh gosh, that's Booker White. Oh gosh, that's Murray Lewis." So that was a good influence on me. Always enjoyed the slide. I'm sorry. Uh, yeah, I don't know Dylan, but I had one of the songs I recorded. I had when I lived in New York City. The person who played drums and also piano for me, we he played with Bob Dylan during the Rolling Thunder time. His name was Howie Wyatt, and he played the drums with Dylan on a number of times on the albums, and he played piano. So, but he played piano and drums for me. It was something. The music's an illusion. You're thinking, like you're going to be successful. I was on an album in 1980. It was one of the top 10 blues albums, won a W.C. Handy Award, and at that time in 1980, we were very popular. But after that, the music changed. Music is like fashion business. The music changed, and we were back out on the Chitlin circuit. Like it's all an illusion. It was called The Keeper of the Flame. It was with a slide guitar player, Mr. J.B. Hutto. And J.B. was called the Keeper of the Flame because he was the last person of his generation alive from the Elmore James and Hound Dog Taylor were both passed away. And J.B. was playing that slide guitar like you hear Elmore James play. And it was funny because now there's Little Ed and the Blues Imperials, and Little Ed is JB's nephew, and he was really little when I knew him. When I first met him, he was really Little Ed, and he would come and unload the trucks for us and stuff. But he's playing just like JB now. He plays the slide guitar, and he's the Keeper of the Flame. Yeah, he plays in St. Louis. He lives in Chicago. Huh? Yes. Huh? Yeah, I played with J.B. Hutto, and I met him on the East Coast. And when I was growing up, you had to go to one of the coasts to make a national career. So I went to the East Coast and made a national career out of Boston. First started out in Boston and then New York City. And then and I met JB in the East Coast. And when we were on tour, we would come back to St. Louis and play at a club that was named after JB. There was a guy here, Frank Babcock, who had a club out in Village, Lantern Village out in West County. And he would go, he went to school in Chicago, and when he was finished with his studying, he would go see JB in a club. And he just loved him so much. When he graduated from school, when he graduated from college, he came back home and was working for Channel 5 and had a couple other businesses. And he opened up a club called JB Hutto's. So I would come back and play with JB Hutto at JB Hutto's Woods Mill in 40. Yes, huh? No, I'm not sure. I'm not really, I'm not too familiar with that. Does anybody know, Paul, do you know what Piedmont? North Carolina? Oh, huh? hmm North Carolina. So was the stuff that I was playing was more, like I said, hill country and Delta stuff, Mississippi and Tennessee. But yes, uh-huh. Have I gone during that time? I never went to Clarksdale. No, during that. Well, now it's like it seems to be like they have I haven't been down there now even, but I think that it just became popularized because of the location and things like that. I remember people from France would come and stay with me, and they would go down throughout Mississippi and take pictures of the different things in Clarksdale and Muddy Waters, Home, and all these different places that they read about. hmm No, I left town like in '73, and I didn't come back until '91. So I didn't really experience it. Although I had Keith Doder played harmonica for me. Ron Edwards and Keith Doder and I played a whole lot together, and he played with Tommy Bankhead. But I did know Tommy, and I know Benny Smith and everybody, But I didn't really learn from them so much here in town. I was more on the East Coast learning. I played with John Hammond. He was a East Coast and different people. Used to play with rockabilly people, sleep. Thief. Okay, is any more questions? I have one more. Yes. Um, well, I did we cut a lot of different people like Robert Wilkins, you know, Houston Stackhouse. Um, but I didn't really hang around with them as often much, Sam Chapman. But I really wasn't associating with them, but I met them in the scene. I played with Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, Lightning Hopkins. Um, hmm? What? No, I met Howlin' Wolf, but I met Muddy Waters, and I hung around with those. We were all on the same circuit, but I played with Sonny and Brownie and Lightning Hopkins, Larry Davis. He was a guy who wrote the song Texas Flood that Stevie Ray made popular. Stevie Ray and Double Trouble, they were on the same circuit, with Luann Barton was a singer at the time. We would see each other in Baltimore at this place called No Fish Today. He'd be coming and we'd be going, or vice versa. We were on the same circuit. Part of the Thunderbirds, Jimmy Vaughn. But thank you so much. And just remember, you know, music brings people together. And I hope that this has brought you, I'm so happy to see you today. And I hope that you enjoyed yourself as much as I enjoyed talking to you tonight.
Again for Bob Case. Once again, I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's through the support of our members and our donors that we are able to offer free programming like this to you. So if you haven't done so, I urge you to consider becoming a member. As a member, you get exclusive access to different perks like discounts on concert tickets, discounts in the gift shop, and you get in free to the museum, amongst many other things. So once again, thanks for coming out, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Yeah, there's a tip jar here. You know, it's always hip to tip. Leave a bit before you split. I'll see you soon, okay? All right. Let me get behind you.
Boogie line.